The suspicious financial transactions had been happening for months, but casino security guard Detective Ray Morgan was the first to notice the pattern. Because spotting money laundering schemes, identifying criminal networks, and tracking illegal financial operations weren't skills he'd learned from casino training. They were techniques he'd mastered during 8 years as an FBI financial crime specialist whose undercover work had dismantled some of the country's largest criminal organizations. The Golden Palace Casino attracted serious money and the people who moved it. Located in the entertainment district, it catered to high-stakes players and clientele who preferred discreet financial transactions and absolute privacy. Ray Morgan had been working casino security for 3 years, and in that time he had earned a reputation as the most observant and reliable security professional on the team. At 41, he possessed the kind of calm, analytical presence that made nervous players feel comfortable while keeping suspicious activity under scrutiny before it could become a problem. To his colleagues, Ray was the detail-oriented guy who noticed patterns that others missed, remembered faces that appeared at unusual times, and had an almost uncanny ability to identify potential problems before they escalated. His background check had shown law enforcement experience, but in a city full of former police officers and retired federal agents, that detail hadn't seemed particularly noteworthy. To casino management, Ray Morgan was the security professional who could handle complex situations with discretion and maintain the sophisticated atmosphere that high-end gaming required. VIP players felt comfortable when Ray was on duty, and executives trusted him to identify threats without creating scenes. But what none of them knew was that Ray's law enforcement experience had been 8 years as an FBI special agent specializing in financial crimes, money laundering investigations, and exactly the kind of sophisticated criminal enterprise detection that casinos hoped they would never need, but should always be prepared for. The skills that made Ray effective at casino security, pattern recognition, behavioral analysis, financial transaction assessment, identifying relationships between seemingly unconnected individuals, weren't just good instincts. They were advanced investigative techniques developed through years of infiltrating criminal organizations and following money trails that led to some of the country's most dangerous criminal enterprises. As Ray conducted his evening security briefing with the night shift, he was unconsciously applying investigative protocols that had been refined through years of tracking money laundering operations, identifying criminal networks, and building cases that had resulted in hundreds of arrests and millions of dollars in recovered assets. Ray had been noticing the unusual activity for 3 months, but tonight was the first time all the pieces had clicked into place. It started with seemingly routine observations, certain players who appeared on specific nights, financial transactions that followed subtle but consistent patterns, and behavioral indicators that most casino security wouldn't recognize as significant. But Ray Morgan wasn't most casino security guards. At 11:47 p.m. on Thursday night, as he reviewed the evening's transaction reports, Ray saw what he had been unconsciously tracking for months. The pattern wasn't obvious. It required the kind of analytical thinking that came from years of following money through complex criminal enterprises. "Control," he said into his radio, using the calm tone that had served him well in both federal investigations and civilian security. "I need to speak with you privately about some financial irregularities I've been tracking." Casino security supervisor Maria Santos had worked with Ray for 2 years and had learned to trust his analytical instincts completely. When Ray said he'd identified financial irregularities, it meant he'd spotted something that other security professionals would have missed entirely. "What kind of irregularities?" she asked as they met in the security office. Ray pulled up the transaction records he'd been quietly documenting. Structured transactions designed to avoid federal reporting requirements, multiple individuals making cash exchanges that, when viewed individually, appear routine, but when you map the timing, amounts, and participants, they form a classic money laundering pattern. Maria looked at the data Ray had compiled. To her, it looked like routine casino transactions. To Ray, it looked like a sophisticated financial crime operation. "How can you be sure?" "Because I've seen this exact pattern before," Ray said, then realized he had revealed more than he intended. Maria studied Ray's analysis, then looked at him with the kind of recognition that comes from working with someone whose expertise clearly exceeds their current position. "Ray, where exactly did you learn to identify money laundering patterns?" Ray had been dreading this conversation for 3 years. He had chosen casino security specifically because it seemed like a way to use his analytical skills in a controlled environment, away from the high-stakes world of federal investigations that had consumed 8 years of his life. "FBI," he said simply. "Financial Crimes Division, 8 years." Maria Santos was trying to process the fact that the Golden Palace Casino had unknowingly hired a former FBI financial crimes specialist to work their security team. The quiet, analytical security guard who had been tracking suspicious transactions was someone who had built his career on exactly this type of investigation. "FBI financial crimes," she repeated. "Real FBI?" Ray nodded. "Specializing in money laundering, organized crime financial operations, and undercover work targeting criminal enterprises. I spent 8 years building cases against some of the country's most sophisticated criminal organizations." As Ray explained his background, Maria began to understand why their most reliable security guard had always seemed to operate at a different level. The pattern recognition, the behavioral analysis, the ability to identify connections that other people missed. These weren't just natural talents. They were advanced investigative skills. "The pattern you've identified," Maria said, looking at Ray's documentation. "How serious is this?" "If I'm right and the pattern holds, we're looking at a multi-million-dollar money laundering operation using our casino as a washing mechanism. The individuals involved are likely connected to organized crime, and the transactions we're seeing represent a small fraction of a much larger criminal enterprise." Maria felt her blood run cold. "Should we call the police?" "We should call the FBI," Ray corrected. "This is federal jurisdiction, and if I'm right about the scope of this operation, local law enforcement won't have the resources to handle it properly." But as Ray looked at Maria's expression, part amazement, part concern about what this meant for the casino, he realized that his quiet career at the Golden Palace was about to become much more complicated. "However," he continued, "before we make that call, I need you to understand something. If we report this, the FBI will want to know how we identified a sophisticated money laundering operation that their own financial intelligence units haven't detected. And that's going to lead to questions about my background that I've been avoiding for 3 years." 2 days after Ray's report to casino management, FBI Special Agent Jennifer Park arrived at the Golden Palace to assess the suspected money laundering operation. She had been briefed on the security guard who had identified the criminal pattern, but nothing had prepared her for what she discovered when she met Ray Morgan. "You're Ray Morgan," she said, recognition dawning in her voice. "Special Agent Raymond Morgan, Financial Crimes Division." Ray looked at her with the same steady composure that had served him through countless federal investigations. "Former Special Agent Morgan," he corrected. "Sir, your work on the Castellano crime family investigation is still used as a training case at Quantico, and the undercover operation that brought down the Chicago money laundering ring. That was textbook financial crimes work." As Agent Park reviewed Ray's analysis of the casino's suspicious transactions, she found herself looking at investigative work that matched the quality of anything produced by active FBI financial crimes specialists. Ray had identified patterns, traced connections, and documented evidence with the precision that had made him one of the Bureau's most effective agents. "Mr. Morgan," she said, "this is exceptional investigative work. The pattern you've identified represents a money laundering operation that we estimate involves over $50 million in illegal proceeds. How did you spot this when our own financial intelligence monitoring didn't flag it? Because I was looking at it from the inside, Ray explained. FBI financial monitoring focuses on banking transactions and electronic transfers. But old-school money laundering still uses cash-intensive businesses like casinos. The criminals adapted their methods to avoid federal detection, but they couldn't avoid detection from someone who understood both their techniques and the casino environment. Agent Park was quiet for a moment, processing the implications. "Sir, would you be willing to work with our task force on this investigation? Your expertise in both financial crimes and casino operations makes you uniquely qualified to help us build this case." Ray thought about the question he had been asking himself for 3 years. "As a consultant, yes, but I want to stay at the Golden Palace. These investigations take months, and someone needs to continue monitoring the pattern to make sure we don't miss anything." "Actually, sir, that might be exactly what we need. Would you be willing to continue your security work while coordinating with our financial crimes team? You'd be our eyes and ears on the inside while we build the federal case." Over the following 3 months, Ray found himself living a double life that felt both familiar and strange. To his casino colleagues, he remained the reliable security guard who worked nights and filed detailed reports. To the FBI Financial Crimes Task Force, he was their most valuable intelligence source. The coordination required skills that Ray had developed during his 8 years of federal service, but had thought he'd left behind. Secure communications, evidence documentation, surveillance coordination, techniques that had once been his daily routine, but that seemed surreal in the context of casino security work. "Agent Park," Ray said during one of their weekly coordination meetings, "the pattern is expanding. I'm now tracking 7 individuals who appear to be part of the operation, and the transaction amounts are increasing. This isn't just money laundering. It's sophisticated enough to suggest organized crime involvement." Agent Park reviewed Ray's latest intelligence reports. "Sir, your documentation is providing us with evidence that we never would have obtained through traditional financial monitoring. The subjects have no idea they're under investigation, and your position gives us surveillance access that we couldn't achieve any other way." As the investigation progressed, Ray realized that his transition from FBI agent to casino security guard had given him a unique perspective on financial crimes. He understood both the federal investigation techniques and the operational environment where the crimes were taking place. "The subjects are using gaming transactions to disguise the source of their money," Ray explained to the task force. "They're not just washing cash, they're creating artificial gaming histories that make illegal proceeds look like legitimate winnings. It's more sophisticated than most agents realize." 3 months later, when the FBI task force executed coordinated arrests based on Ray's intelligence, they dismantled a $50 million money laundering operation and arrested 12 individuals connected to organized crime. "Mr. Morgan," Agent Park said as the investigation concluded, "this case wouldn't have been possible without your expertise. The Bureau would like to offer you a position as Senior Financial Crimes Consultant, working with casinos and other cash-intensive businesses to identify similar operations." Ray considered the FBI's offer as he sat in the Golden Palace security office, looking at the incident reports that had become routine over his 3 years of casino security work. The federal position would allow him to use his investigative expertise on a larger scale, coordinating with multiple agencies and training other agents in casino-based financial crimes detection. But as he thought about what had drawn him to casino security in the first place, Ray realized that his answer had been evolving throughout the investigation. "Agent Park," he said when he called to respond to the offer, "I appreciate the opportunity, but I'd like to make a counter-proposal." "Sir?" Let me stay at the Golden Palace as senior security analyst, but also develop training programs that teach casino security personnel how to identify financial crimes patterns. I can create protocols that turn routine security monitoring into effective financial crimes detection. Agent Park was quiet for a moment. You want to train casino security to think like FBI agents? I want to train them to recognize the patterns that federal agents look for so that suspicious activity gets reported before it becomes a major criminal enterprise, Ray clarified. Most money laundering operations depend on the assumption that casino security won't recognize sophisticated financial crimes. If security personnel understand what to look for, we can detect these operations much earlier. 6 months later, Ray Morgan was still working at the Golden Palace Casino, but he had also become something more, the developer of casino financial crimes awareness training that was being implemented at gaming establishments across the country. On weekends, Ray taught courses in financial pattern recognition, money laundering detection, and criminal behavior analysis to casino security teams. He helped develop protocols that turned routine transaction monitoring into sophisticated financial crimes prevention. But the most important part of Ray's new role happened every day when he walked through the Golden Palace's gaming floors, ensuring that legitimate players could enjoy their experience while maintaining the kind of analytical oversight that prevented criminal organizations from exploiting gaming establishments. "Evening, Ray," said casino manager Patricia Williams as she passed through the security office. "Everything look normal tonight?" "Same as always," Ray replied, conducting his routine analysis of transaction patterns and customer behavior. Clean operations, legitimate play, no unusual patterns. As he watched Patricia return to her management duties with the confidence that came from knowing their casino was protected by someone with extraordinary analytical skills, Ray reflected on how his definition of service had evolved. As an FBI agent, his job had been to investigate criminal organizations after they had established their operations. Now his job was to help other security professionals develop the skills to identify criminal activity before it became entrenched, preventing money laundering operations rather than just prosecuting them after the fact. The transition from federal investigations to casino security hadn't been about stepping down from important work. It had been about finding new ways to apply critical skills in service of preventing the financial crimes that funded organized crime and terrorism. Today, if you visit the Golden Palace Casino, you might notice that the security feels different from other gaming establishments. More analytically aware without being intrusive, more observant without being obvious, more sophisticated without being intimidating. The security staff move with enhanced financial awareness, recognize patterns that might indicate criminal activity, and maintain the kind of analytical oversight that makes legitimate gaming safe while preventing criminal exploitation. And if you look closely at the senior security analyst who coordinates these operations with quiet efficiency, you might see something in his approach that suggests serious investigative training. Ray Morgan looks like a casino security professional, works as a casino security professional, and serves as a casino security professional. But underneath that civilian role is someone whose experience with financial crimes investigation was developed at the highest levels of federal law enforcement. Sometimes the most effective crime prevention comes not from the most obvious enforcement measures, but from the most unexpected expertise quietly applied to civilian situations. Casino security might seem like routine hospitality work, but when it's performed by someone with advanced financial crimes training, it becomes something more. A critical line of defense that protects legitimate gaming while preventing criminal organizations from exploiting entertainment industries. The FBI's mission includes protecting American financial institutions from criminal exploitation. Ray Morgan discovered that this mission could be fulfilled just as meaningfully in a casino security office as it had been in federal investigation units, proving that the skills developed in service to federal law enforcement can find profound application in protecting the legitimate businesses that make entertainment and commerce possible. Financial crimes investigation isn't just about building cases after crimes have been committed. It's about developing the analytical capabilities that prevent criminal organizations from establishing operations in the first place. Ray Morgan learned that this mission could be pursued through training civilian security professionals to recognize the patterns that federal agents investigate, creating a network of informed observers who protect legitimate businesses from criminal exploitation. What do you think? Have you ever encountered casino security that seemed exceptionally analytical and aware? Someone whose attention to detail and pattern recognition suggested serious investigative training? Let us know in the comments below, and remember to subscribe to The Veteran Chronicles for more stories of dedicated professionals who continue serving their communities with skills developed in federal service to our nation.